Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming hike, trek or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for. Let's get into today's episode. Alright, hello guys. Today we are talking all about how to keep up with hiking and bushwalking groups and bushwalking clubs. Now, the reason I want to talk about this today is this is a story I hear again and again and again from hikers that I hop on the phone with. And basically it goes something like this. You know, obviously there's so many different hiking clubs and bushwalking clubs out there. And when we're first getting into our hiking and when we're first getting into our bushwalking, whatever it may be, sometimes we might be doing it by ourselves. And then obviously sometimes it might be difficult to find people who you want to do it with, or it might be you might not have the confidence to go out and explore new trails by yourself. So the logical thought process there is like, hey, maybe I'm just going to join up with a local hiking group, a local hiking club, whether it's something just off meetups, meetup.com, whether it's something that's a bit more formal, like an actual proper club, or whatever it may be. And what tends to happen is you might not really know much about this club before you step into it. You might not know much about the different hikers who are going on there. You might not know about how they go about things. And all too often I hear the story from hikers who they'll go into one of these group events and they'll just have a really, really bad time. Maybe they're a little bit slower hiker and they feel like they're holding people up all the time. Maybe they step onto a trail that they're not particularly ready for. Maybe they're just not expecting, the way that they go about hiking is very, very different to how you do it yourself. And you might not be able to take time to take pictures or, have lunch or whatever it may be. And while a lot of people do find groups and clubs that work for them, I have spoken to so many hikers out there who do have a bit of a sour taste in their, in their mouth after an experience with a bushwalking club or a hiking club. Or on the other side of things, they might just be very, very nervous or very, very self-conscious about stepping into a group and actually going hiking with a group, and maybe a group of people that you might not actually know. So today's episode is sort of centered around giving you a few tips to make this process a little bit easier. So if you do step into a brand new hiking club or a bushwalking club and you don't really know what to expect, then you have a range of strategies and a range of things in place which will give you the best chance possible of just keeping up with everyone and not getting caught on the back foot and not getting yourself in that situation where you just have a really bad day, because it does happen and it is not much fun. Alternatively, you can use these tips if you are going out and you just want to make a hike for yourself a little bit easier. And all of these things I have talked about in the past are things that I use when I find myself in a situation where, I might not be in the best physical position for a particular hike and I need to be able to keep up with everyone and put in a good performance. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you are stepping into a hiking group for the first time, or you're worried about going up with a group which are a little bit quicker than you, here are a few bits and pieces that I would highly recommend you go about. Now, first and foremost is number one, try your best to have some breakfast and get some fuel into you before you hike. Now, I know sometimes this can be tough, particularly if you're having an early start, but getting some fuel in before you start moving is super, super, super valuable. And if your stomach can handle it, and if you don't feel sick eating early in the morning, I highly recommend this. So if you are starting with a 6 o'clock start and you do have to wake up an extra half an hour earlier to get some food into you, highly, highly, highly recommend it. Now, if you're in the situation where you might be in a little bit of a rush and you don't really have enough time to let your food digest, or maybe you just do struggle with a bit of solid foods in the morning, an easy solution here is to go for more of a liquid breakfast. So because basically most of the time liquid foods are digested a little bit quicker than solid foods, so it can be something that's really, really easy to get a little bit of fuel into you before you go, but it's a little bit nicer on the stomach. So a couple of recommendations here might be making a smoothie the night before and then just sipping it it a little bit when you wake up, whether you're driving to the hike or whatever it may be. Maybe it might just be having a sports drink on the way to your hike or whatever, and that's super, super quick digesting. But that first and foremost, if you can get that fuel into you before you start moving, already you're going to be an advantage, whether or not, if you don't know what you're expecting, but at least you're prepared for the worst. Number 2 is get there early and do a little bit of a warm-up. Now, I have heard many stories of sort of hikers who they struggle to find the start place, they struggle to find the trailhead or whatever it may be. And they get there right on the money. They don't really have time to settle, and all of a sudden the hiking group is just full steam ahead. And there might be a quick pace, and the hiker just might not be ready for that. And then that turns it into a struggle from the first 10 minutes. So I highly recommend, if you're going out with a group for the first time, get there 20 minutes early even. Get there, do a few stretches, get yourself warmed up, get yourself mentally and physically ready. So if they do start up and they are absolutely floored, pedal to the floor and they're straight into it, at least you're not going to be caught on the back foot, and at least you will be ready to get rolling. The next recommendation, which is super, super, super important whenever you're hiking in a group, is make your snacking accessible. Now, what I mean by this is snacking can make or break your energy when you're actually on the trail. And something I always recommend to my clients is just eat more than you would first think. And a little rule of thumb is I try to get my clients to have something small every hour. It doesn't have to be much, but something small, carbohydrate based and quick digesting every hour, just to make sure those fuel stores are topped up, make sure you're performing optimally, and make sure you're staying as comfortable as you can. In the situation where you're going with a hiking group and they're a little bit quicker than you, or maybe they're a little bit fitter than you, at least if you're topping up your fuel stores constantly and you're staying on top of that, that'll give you the best chance possible of keeping up with them, as well as staying comfortable and not absolutely getting exhausted. But the issue here is when you are with a group, is if you don't have the food accessible, you may have your snacks in your pack, you may not have things that are super easy to eat. Sometimes with these hiking groups, they don't stop to eat, and you don't have the opportunity just to stop and snack every hour or so, and they may just stop for lunch, or they may be on a mission. So in your situation, if you are going with a group, you've got to make your snacking as accessible as possible. Now, what I mean by this is, keep something in your pockets or in your hip pocket on your pack, something you can easily reach while you're walking. And also plan for the fact that what can you eat when you're actually walking along, and what can you nibble on while you're actually walking along, which won't be a pain. So don't choose things in massive amounts of packaging or things that you have to unlock Tupperware or anything like that, but have really, really simple snacks which you can literally reach in, put it in your mouth, chew while you're walking, and keep on topping up. And if you can stay on top of that every single hour, whether or not you're stopping, that is going to give you a massive advantage, and I highly, highly recommend that. The next one is pretty much in a similar vein there, is making your drinking accessible. So hydration can play a massive role in your performance, as we've said many times in this podcast. And all too often when you're going with a group, whether it's a hiking group or a club or whatever it may be, again, the stops may be limited depending on who you're working with. And you may not get the opportunity to stop and drink water as you like. So you want to make sure that you're in this situation where you can stay on top of your hydration, even if you're not stopping. So usually this is going to mean having a hydration bladder. That's just so much easier to drink while you're walking as opposed to stopping and have a bottle. If you can walk while drinking from your bottle, absolutely go with that and stay on top of it. But just make sure you are constantly and regularly drinking small amounts of water. Don't wait until they stop. Don't wait until other people are thirsty. Stay on top of your own hydration, and it will do you well. So even if it's a day hike, I would recommend, having a hydration bladder. It just makes things so much easier on that front. Now, in amongst all that, again, what I'd recommend is just adding some electrolytes with a high carbohydrate solution into that drink, just so when you are walking along and you are drinking, number one, you're topping up your electrolytes, which is always going to be good. And number two, you're getting those extra carbohydrates in, which can help top up those fuel stores, help you performing at your best, and help you moving forward. So even if you are in a tough section of the trail and you just can't force yourself to have a small snack, at least you're still getting some fuel in there. And I highly, highly recommend that. Now, the next situation is with your lunch, because this is a story I've heard from a few people recently, in the sense that, a lot of us when we're hiking, we'll go do a big, strong morning, then we'll have like 30, 40, 60 minutes just to sit back and relax and have a nice slow lunch. And a story I've heard is, quite a few bushwalking clubs or hiking clubs, they don't like to do this. They like to have a really quick lunch, just cram some food in and then get moving, which is fair enough if you're prepared for it. But if you're not prepared for it and you have this nice, big, heavy lunch, which is, you usually have plenty of time to digest, but you got to eat that really quickly, then get back on the trail. That's going to put you at a disadvantage. And that's not only going to make you feel bad about having to be so slow with your eating, but it's going to sit in your stomach. So the first time you go out with a group, the first time you go out with a hiking club, and if you're not aware of how they operate during the lunch, I would highly recommend try to make your lunch relatively quickly digesting. So what I mean by this is if you're choosing bread options, try to go for white bread as opposed to brown or wholemeal bread, which may seem a bit counterintuitive for what a lot of people talk about, but the white stuff's always going to be digested a little bit quicker. Try to minimize the amount of protein and heavy fats and even sort of starchy vegetables that you're having with your lunch, and really try to make it light and very, very quickly digesting, something that's not going to sit in your stomach. So if you are in that situation where it's a very quick lunch, you're ready and it's not going to put you at a disadvantage. And I highly recommend that. And then the next thing I want to say is if you are a coffee drinker and if you enjoy your caffeine, have one in the morning, absolutely. I highly, highly recommend that. But more than likely, you're not going to get an opportunity to have it, have one in the afternoon or have one with lunch. You're not going to stop and make a coffee or anything like that. And as we've said in this podcast many times before, caffeine is an incredible performing enhancing supplement, meaning it can improve your endurance performance. It can improve your time to exhaustion. It can improve your aerobic capacity. It can improve so many different things related to hiking, including your mood, and it can be absolutely fantastic. So if you were concerned about a quick hiking group, or you were worried about a quick hiking group, or whatever it may be, having some caffeine pills in your back pocket can be a really, really handy addition. And you can literally buy these at the pharmacy. They're just the same as having a coffee, except they're in pill form. And maybe with your lunch, you just have a caffeine tablet with that. And by the time you sort of get back on the trail, you've got that sort of boost from the caffeine. You've got that boost. You're ready to roll and you can keep up with everyone. All of these things, they're just little tips, but they can make a significant difference. And I know keeping up with a group is a concern for many, many people. And obviously, I haven't even mentioned, if you are sort of stepping into this and you're not confident or you're worried about your speed, there's so many different things you can do in your training around that to help improve all those different areas, which I've talked about many, many times. But if you're in this situation where you're just stepping into a group, I highly recommend you tick off all these things or just be prepared with all of these things, because it can make a massive difference whether you jump into something a little bit not prepared for, or whether you're just with a group and you just want to feel a little bit better and a little bit stronger, and you can just enjoy yourself and chat away and not have to worry about being at the back of the pack. So just to recap, make sure you have brekkie, whether it's a liquid or a solid breakfast. Get there a little bit early and warm up mentally and physically. Make your snacking accessible so you can, get a little snack every hour, even if you're not stopping. Make your drinking accessible as well. Have that hydration bladder. Have those electrolytes. Make sure your lunch is light and it's quick digesting, at least on the first time, and maybe sneak a few caffeine pills as well, or one or two, and have that in your back pocket for if you need. All of these things any hiker can use in any situation, but if you are going out with a hiking group or a bushwalking group or a club or whatever it may be, they may serve you particularly well, and I would recommend you give them a go. So I do hope you've gotten a little bit of value out of this today, guys. There's some simple tips in there, but they can make a solid difference. Now, if you were interested in expanding on any of these topics, or you were interested in learn a little bit more about what you can do to prepare for these type of group hike environments, whether it's physically preparing with your training or a few extra tips, anything that you may need to know, I would absolutely love if you can come and join the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. Now, if you haven't been a part of that group before, it's a really great place to share ideas, to expand on topics we talk about in this podcast, and really just add a lot of extra value into your training journey. So if you were interested in that, it's the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. I'll leave a link in the show notes below and you can join up there. So thank you so much for listening today, guys. I hope you got a bit of value out of it, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.